possibly its last commercial local radio station goes on the air in Sussex this weekend. But Radio Mercury is hitting the airwaves at a time when the going is far from easy for independent local radio. The existing stations are being hit by financial problems and increasing competition from pirate radios, which don't have to pay fees for the music and news they broadcast. Nicholas Owen reports on the problems faced by the independent network and its newest recruit.
You're listening to Radio Mercury on 103.6 on FM.
A new disc jockey preparing himself and Britain's latest commercial radio station to go on the air on Saturday. Until recently, Jeff Aspel was a reporter on a motorcycle magazine. A familiar surname? Yes, his older brother Michael Aspel was one of the star attractions at the neighbouring and long-established Capital Radio in London. Mercury will transmit from this elegant base to North Sussex and a swathe of Surrey that's about the richest area in the whole country. Plenty of room for lunchtime bowls on the lawn, but it's cost £1 million to get Mercury on the air. So will the South East stockbroker belt listen in and provide enough advertising? Managing Director John O'Monier.
Well, we've gone overboard here to produce what we feel is going to be one of the most outstanding stations on the independent local radio network. We've spent many years planning it, I might add, and so I'm very confident, we're very bullish about it as a company, that we will stick very closely to our original financial projections and the company will be a rip-roaring success.
So Radio Mercury is starting life with all sorts of high hopes. But it wasn't very good timing when it was trying to raise finance about a year or so ago, because things were going sadly wrong for another commercial station many miles away in the Midlands. Centre Radio had opened up in Leicester in 1981.
This is Centre Radio in the centre of your dial from the centre of the universe on 238 metres medium wave, 97.1 megahertz VHF in stereo. You only tune into Centre Radio once in your life and the dial never moves again.
But less than 2 years later, it went bust. The saga emphasises that it's not necessarily a mere shortage of advertising and listening loyalty that can cripple a station. There's often considerable management inexperience. The chairman of the company which ran Centre was Ken Bowder, retired solicitor, president of Leicester Conservatives and a former Lord Mayor of the city.
Well, when you form a local radio station, a lot of people come together, like myself, who have enthusiasm without inside knowledge. At the outset, one said we were going to have $750,000, which sounds a lot of money, but buying premises, buying equipment, and of course, if you're going to get the right staff, you must pay the right wages. I think that it was expected that we were going to get away with it with that amount of money, and plainly, we should have had another 250,000, 500,000 on top.
Centre Radio's gone, but commercial radio in Leicester came back on the air last month, a new venture half owned by the neighbouring Radio Trent based in Nottingham, emphasising that some small stations have been just too small to cope with the competitive pressures. Commercial radio started 11 years ago under the eagle eye of the IBA, the Independent Broadcasting Authority, which sets technical standards and charges the station's rental for the use of transmitters. Mercury's opening will, at least for the moment, complete the map of independent local radio stations in this country, though large areas are still uncovered, including some big population centres like Oxford and Southampton. But only 2.5% of advertising expenditure goes to commercial radio each year, £80 million worth. So the pressures have been great on small stations. Only last month, two loss-makers, Cardiff and Gwent, merged. Mercury may serve a more prosperous area, but as well as television, newspapers and BBC radio, it's remarkably hemmed in by commercial competitors. There are 2 other stations in London and 2 in nearby towns. Worse, there's a popular pirate station, Radio Jackie, taking both listeners and the legal station's lifeblood, advertising revenue. Here at Radio Jackie, they claim the IBA rules encourage unnecessary sophistication. Jackie wants its brand of low-cost radio officially accepted. It's all bad news for the likes of Mercury, which is finding that Radio Jackie's advertising salesmen are offering customers cheaper rates.
I don't any longer call them pirate radio stations because that brings back sort of swashbuckling connotations, which they are not these days. We call them illegal broadcasters. We take a very strong view about them here because we have a number within our transmission area. When one bears in mind that this is an exceedingly expensive operation to put together under current legislation, the competition we're receiving at a commercial level from these radio stations is not fair competition. I'm fully confident that were certain stations which broadcast in our area which are illegal given a licence tomorrow, then they would probably be broke within a very, very short space of time.
On top of everything else, commercial radio has labour troubles, a pay dispute which has disrupted several stations. The Journalists' Union thinks the present problems stem from the way the network was conceived.
They haven't thought through the basic requirements as far as investment is concerned. They've not thought through whether there is in fact an advertising basis for the independent local radio station within an area. I won't name the areas, but certainly a number of areas are such small communities that it seems to me doubtful whether there can be the return on the basic capital investment. Therefore, at the outset of this, there should have been a different analysis and established public service broadcasting, which ILR is, on a different financial footing.
The whole ethos of local radio, independent local radio, is to be as local as possible, because that is the greatest characteristic that when we do research in our areas, that people value our service. It's not long ago that 52% of the nation were listening to independent radio in preference to the 5 national and local BBC services, so we're not ashamed of what we've been producing over the last 10 to 11 years. But there are circumstances now as a result of the recession which mean that companies have to look to their costs and see if they can save overheads.
Your new radio station for Leicester and Leicestershire, which you can hear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, in fact, forever.
Few other businesses will be caught forecasting like that.
The weather, thousands of people are struggling to work this morning as the big freeze continues. Already several hundred vehicles have had to be abandoned in snowdrifts up to 9 feet deep. Meanwhile, the pirate radio ship Radio Caroline is back at anchor in the North Sea after spending the night adrift in gales. Further north, lifeboats were launched to aid an ailing ferry after her engines failed. The Speedlink Vanguard later docked under her own steam.